Good evening. Welcome to Wednesday Night Study Live here on Tisha Talks Mental Wellness. Happy to have you here. This is where we meet on Wednesdays to study for addiction counselor exams. As you come in, please type in your state of where you're at and what exam you're studying for. If you're not studying for an exam, just let us know what area of topic area you're interested in. Are you in college? Are you just here to learn? Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you can hear me clearly, please put a 1 in the chat. As you're entering, if you are new here, good evening, Sheila. If you are new here, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And also hit that bell notification, that little bell under the video, so you can get updates when I post new study videos. Also, if you are interested in receiving reminders and joining my email list, you can click the link in the chat and download the free study resource, and that automatically adds you to my email list. I send reminders about our lives, and I also update you when I post new study videos. Welcome and good evening. And per usual, hello to the playback. Hey y'all. Sorry you couldn't meet us live, but it's all to the good. Make sure you are putting where you are watching from, what topic areas you are studying. If you're new here, let me know what exam you're studying for. If you are not new and you're already a study partner, put in the comments what area you need to work on more. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Awesome, Sheila. 13 days till I sit for the third attempt, AADC in Phoenix. I feel readier than ever. That is awesome. That is good to hear that you feel ready. Yes, wishing you all the best. Good evening. Okay, hello Marceline. Hello Stephanie. Stephanie, which ICNRC exam are you studying for? The ADC or the AADC? Hello Cicely. Thank you. All right, so I'm loud and clear. Hello Colette. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome everyone. Welcome study partners. Welcome study partners. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to Addiction Counselor Exam Study Group here on Tisha Talks Mental Wellness. We gather here to do practice questions and study for several addiction counselor exams, programs, classes, and for clinicians who want to just spruce up on their knowledge. Again, frequently asked questions. Does this study group or does this channel help with insert particular test? It probably does. We don't study for a specific test because we don't know what's on any of those tests, but we do have a good idea of what foundational knowledge you need in order to pass most addiction counselor exams. We've had study partners to pass the ADC, the AADC, the NCAC 1, the NCAC 2, and the MAC exam. So we've officially had one person pass the MAC. The ADC is in the lead. I would say most of our study partners have passed the ADC, and then the rest of the study partners have passed the other exams. So yes, studying with us will help you with foundational knowledge and mastering general addiction counseling topics like assessment, drug categories, pharmacology, counseling skills, professional ethics, things like that. So we study through multiple choice questions. Hello, Doreen. Doreen, hello from NYC. All right. I hope everyone is well this evening. I appreciate you for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, study partners. We are here to complete 10 practice exam questions together. This will help us with our clinical reasoning and foundational knowledge. What happens is I read the question and the answers, pause, You put your answer in the chat, and then I reveal the correct answer. At the end, we'll also have 5 or so minutes for question and answers where you can ask questions about specific questions, specific topics, or something you want to know related to addiction counselor exam study and exam prep. Our goal is to strengthen our exam confidence. When we're preparing for exams, certification and licensing exams, I like to share my past method, which is learn the profession. Again, if you are new here, I believe in emerging yourself into addiction counseling profession. That means interviewing another professional in your state, because each state has slightly different rules about certification, licensures, and how to become an addiction professional, and kind of learn about their journey to becoming an addiction professional, specifically someone who had to take an exam. The A is for apply concepts through practice questions. I really like a lot of practice questions. Make sure you check out the practice questions playlist. You go to playlist, and then one of the playlists is labeled practice questions, and there are over now 400 questions on our playlist, between 8 or 9 videos. And this will help you learn how to reason. Not only do you need to know foundational knowledge like drug categories, or what category is cocaine in, what does THC stands for in marijuana and cannabis. Those are foundational questions that you absolutely need to know. But consistently answering questions about these topics, whether it's in multiple choice format or case study format, helps you flex your clinical reasoning muscle. The S stands for simulate the exam setting. Once you have consistently studied, make sure you are taking practice tests and practice questions in quiet areas, so you are managing your test anxiety and managing your anxiousness in regards to test taking. And lastly, study your weak areas strategically. A way you can do this is through the checklist. If you have not checked out my checklist, you can go to the link in the comments or in the description at my stand store. It breaks up 5 or so different addiction counselor topics, and there's a checklist of things you need to know under each topic. This helps you get an idea of what areas you've mastered and what areas you need a little bit more work in. All right, I'm going to check the chat before I get started. Okay. If you can hear me, please put a 1 in the chat before I get started. I don't want to be breaking up. Oh, can you guys hear me? I see some people say they can see. Maybe I'm lagging. Okay. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, Donald. Tisha, on May 30th, I passed the ADC exam with a score of 605. I am now a fully certified form of CADCT to now a CADC. Thank you so much for your online classes and to. All right, Donald. Moving on up. Congratulations to you. We are so very proud of you. It may be your phone, Doreen. Am I low, you guys? Hello, Della. Hello, Cicely. All right. Thank you so much for updating us, Donald. I just was saying ADC is in the lead. I think we've had maybe 20 or so study partners report that they passed. And that's just the people who've reported. So congratulations to you. Your hard work paid off. Hello, Zach. Taking my ADC in California on July 3rd. Okay, Zach, you're up next. Donald just passed, so he's passing the torch to you. Okay, Doreen. No problem. All right, so one more time. Can you guys hear me clear? Put a 1 in the chat if I have normal volume. You can hear me clearly. No lag. And I'll wait till I get more than 4 ones and I'll keep going. Okay, Stephanie says she can hear me clearly. All right, Donald says he can hear me clearly. All right, Jessica, thank you guys. Thank you guys. And Colette, Marceline. All right, guys, let's rock and roll. All right, today's topic is going to lean towards ethics and professional practices. Let me turn on my camera, guys, so I can focus on my script. All right. So from the people who have reported they've passed or people who share their scores with me, the first area that people score the lowest on is counseling skills or counseling practices. And then the second is ethics and professional practices. So this week I decided to circle back around with the ethics and professional practices. So ethics are the rules and principles that guide us in making safe, professional, and client-centered decisions. Wherever you have a professional area or standard, there's going to be ethical practices that each profession has to follow. Why is this important for the exam? Because ethics questions are almost guaranteed to show up in some form. The exam isn't just testing whether you have memorized the code of ethics, it's testing whether you can apply these ethics in real life situations. So when we work through our questions, focus on 3 things: protecting the client's welfare, maintaining professional boundaries, and following our standards as addiction professionals. So remember, we have standards as addiction professionals / counselors. Other professions may have slightly different ones. So you have to be aware of our standard basic practices. And this will help you think through questions on your exams and be able to select the correct, safest answer. All right, here's a sample study checklist. So under professional practices and ethics, you need to be familiar. This is not an exhaustive list, but I just put the ones that can fit. HIPAA basics. You need to understand what HIPAA is, what 42 CFR Part 2 is, confidentiality limits, informed consent, dual relationships, counselor self-disclosure, professional boundaries, scope of practice, documentation standards, record storage requirements, and ethical decision making. Now, these are just very general topics that fall under ethics and professional conduct and standards. If you want specific questions that you can ask yourself to kind of gauge if you've mastered each part, you can get this checklist at the link in the comment. Great, Doreen. Glad to see you back. Just in time for question 1. Question 1. Ethics in addiction counseling are best defined as A, personal values and beliefs that guide counselors in deciding what they think is right or wrong. B, professional principles and standards that guide counselors in making decisions that protect clients and promote ethical practice. C, agency policies developed to improve productivity and ensure counselors meet organizational expectations. Or D, legal requirements that counselors must follow to avoid disciplinary action and maintain licensure. Which one of these best defines ethics? I see B. Okay, Sheila got a B. Jessica, Cicely, Colette, lots of B's. The correct answer is B. Professional principles and standards that guide counselors in making decisions that protect clients and promote ethical practice. Ethics are the professional principles and standards that makes us safe as addiction counselors and encourage a safe environment when working with our clients. Ethics help us protect our clients' welfare, maintain boundaries, and navigate difficult situations when the right answer is not always obvious. A is incorrect because values do influence how we view situations. However, counselors are expected to follow professional ethics rather than make decisions based solely on their own beliefs. C is incorrect because agency policies may support ethical practice, but ethics are broader than workplace rules. A policy may vary from agency to agency, while ethical standards apply across the profession. And D is incorrect because laws and ethics often overlap, but they are not the same. Something can be legal but unethical. And ethical decision making involves more than simply avoiding legal consequences. So the correct answer is B. There are principles and standards that we follow as addiction counselors. Question 2. Professional standards in addiction counseling are best defined as expectations established by the profession that guide competent, ethical, and responsible counseling practice. B. Recommendations counselors may choose to follow based on their clinical judgment and preferred counseling style. C. Requirements designed to protect agencies from liability and ensure staff compliance with workplace expectations. Or D. Legal regulations that dictate the minimum actions counselors must take to avoid disciplinary actions. Which best defines professional standards? All right, I see A, I see C, see another A. All right. The correct answer is A. Professional standards are the expectations established by the profession that define competent, ethical, and appropriate practice. They provide a framework for counselor behavior, decision making, boundaries, documentation, and professional responsibilities. B is incorrect because counselors do exercise clinical judgment. However, professional standards are not optional recommendations. They are expectations that guide practice regardless of personal preference. C. Agency policies may reflect professional standards, but their primary purpose is organization and functioning. Professional standards extend beyond any one employer and are intended to protect clients and uphold the integrity of the profession. And D is incorrect because laws and professional standards often overlap, but they are not the same. Professional standards address what counselors should do to practice competently and ethically, not merely what they must do to avoid legal consequences. So basically they're saying we have standards in our profession and they should be very similar no matter where you go. I should be able to go and talk to any addiction counselor in the United States and we should all agree on certain standards like confidentiality, not crossing professional boundaries, documenting within a certain time limit. All of those is what we all need to know. So those are the standards that they speak of. We all should be abiding by these standards per our profession. All right, question 3. What is the primary difference between HIPAA and 42 CFR Part 2? A. HIPAA protects all healthcare records, while 42 CFR Part 2 specifically provides additional confidentiality protections for substance use disorder treatment records. B. HIPAA applies only to mental health records, while 42 CFR Part 2 applies to all healthcare information maintained by licensed providers. C. HIPAA requires written consent before releasing information for treatment purposes, while 42 CFR Part 2 permits disclosures without consent for coordination of care. Or D. HIPAA and 42 CFR Part 2 provide the same confidentiality protections, but 42 CFR Part 2 imposes stricter documentation requirements. That was a little wordy, y'all, but what's the main difference between HIPAA and 42 CFR Part 2? Okay. All right, I see A's. I see A's across the board. Okay. The correct answer is A. HIPAA protects all healthcare records, while 42 CFR Part 2 specifically provides additional confidentiality protections for substance use disorder treatment records. So an easy way to remember is they both protect our clients' confidentiality, but 42 CFR Part 2 is like an extra lock and key on clients who are specifically receiving substance use disorder treatment due to stigma and discrimination. B is incorrect because HIPAA applies broadly to protected health information, not just mental health records. Part 2 applies specifically to qualifying substance use disorder treatment records. C is incorrect because this reversed the laws. HIPAA generally allows disclosures for treatment, payment, and operations, while 42 CFR Part 2 is more restrictive and often requires written consent. And D is incorrect because both laws address confidentiality. However, they do not provide the same protections. Part 2 offers additional safeguards for substance use treatment information. Question 4. A client voluntarily seeks substance use counseling because they are motivated to make changes in their life. During the intake appointment, the client says, I know I need help, but I'm not really sure what these services involve or what I'm agreeing to. What should the counselor do next? Review the intake paperwork, encourage the client to ask questions later, and begin the initial treatment process to maintain momentum. B. Explore the client's readiness for change, discuss treatment goals, and postpone questions about services until further future sessions. C. Explain the purpose of the services, review the client's rights and responsibilities, answer questions, and confirm understanding before proceeding. Or D. Encourage the client to read the program materials independently, reflect on the information provided, and decide whether to continue. So in terms of informed consent, what should the counselor do next? Client is open and ready, but says they don't really understand. Okay, I see C's, I see A's. The correct answer is C. Explain the purposes of service, review the client's rights and responsibilities, answer questions, and confirm understanding before proceeding. Informed consent is more than obtaining a signature. It's also more than the client agreeing to service. The client, you must do your due diligence in making sure the client understands the service, and that you accommodate them in understanding that if they need something written, if they need a video, if they need you to explain each step in plain language, that's what we're required to do just to make sure they understand what they're agreeing to. It involves ensuring the client understands the nature of services, confidentiality, risk and benefits, expectations, and their rights before treatment. A is incorrect because counselors want to support motivation and engagement. However, informed consent should occur before services move forward, not after treatment has already begun. B is incorrect because assessing motivation and establishing goals are important parts of treatment. However, clients should understand what they are agreeing to before focusing on planning. And D, providing written information can support informed consent, but the counselor is responsible for explaining services and ensuring the client's understanding rather than relying solely on self-review. A question like this may also fall under cultural competency and sometimes ADA questions. So if you have a client that discloses that they have a learning disability or some type of disability, so some of these questions can fall under several categories: ethics, counseling skills, and cultural competency. And the answer is always, it's your responsibility to support them with understanding and to accommodate them. All right, question 5. A counselor has been working with the client for several months. At a community event, the client invites the counselor to their graduation party and says, "You've helped me so much. It would mean a lot if you came to celebrate my family." What is the counselor's best response? A, attend the graduation party briefly to support the client's accomplishments while avoiding clinical discussions. B, ask the client whether attending the event would strengthen the therapeutic relationship and decide together how to proceed. C, explain that attending social events could blur professional boundaries, process the client's feelings about the invitation, and maintain the counseling relationship within appropriate limits. Or D, decline the invitation immediately and avoid further discussion to prevent the client from developing unrealistic expectations. What's the best response in terms of ethics? All right, what do we got, guys? See some C's. Okay. The correct answer is C. Explain that attending social events could blur professional boundaries, process the client's feelings about the invitation, and maintain the counseling relationship within appropriate limits. Okay, seasoned counselors, please don't overthink these type of questions. I know some programs have treatment graduations, things like that. We're usually on the test, they're not trying to trick us. They want to see if we're competent and we understand professional standards. And the general professional standard for counselors and addiction professionals is we don't attend, events like this or parties with our clients because ethically it could cause complications in the relationship because the client may see you as a friend. So don't overthink it. I think some of us, if not most of us, have worked in the field. So there are some situations where you may go to something like this, but maybe it's a part of a program. That's different. Here it strictly says a graduation party. Sometimes when I do psychoeducation or I'm doing supervision, the question will come up, well, what if this happened or what if that happened? For the exam, remember, it's a perfect world. It's no extra complications. It's mostly black and white. So the answer would be C. Try to stay away from social events and gatherings with clients. Ooh, I forgot to explain. So dual relationships occur when counselors have both a professional relationship and another type of relationship with the client. Because dual relationships can impair professional judgment and increase the risk of harm, counselors should maintain clear boundaries. The counselor should acknowledge the client's feelings, explain the importance of professional boundaries, and continue the therapeutic work. And it's our responsibility. The professional in the relationship, the therapeutic relationship, it always falls on us to make sure those lines don't get blurred. This is A is incorrect because celebrating the client's success sounds compassionate. However, attending a client's social event creates a dual relationship and may compromise professional boundaries. B is incorrect because collaboration is important, but ethical boundaries are the counselor's responsibility. Clients should not determine whether boundary crossings are appropriate. And D is incorrect because although declining the invitation protects boundaries, avoiding discussion misses an important therapeutic opportunity to process the client's feelings and provide education about professional roles. All right. Question 6. A former client contacts the counselor requesting a letter endorsing their recovery for a job opportunity. The counselor has not seen the client in over a year and has no current information about the client's functioning or substance use status. What is the most appropriate response? A. Explain that an endorsement cannot be provided based on outdated information and discuss options for a current assessment or updated evaluation. B. Write the letter using the client's previous treatment records and note that the information reflects the client's past participation in services. C. Ask the client to provide documentation of their current recovery activities and use that information to support the endorsement request. Or D. Decline the request because counselors should never provide documentation related to a client's recovery outside of active treatment. Which is the most appropriate response for this scenario? Okay, what do you guys got? Okay. All right, I see some A's. Okay, I see A, I see a D. The correct answer is A. Explain that an endorsement cannot be provided based on outdated information and discuss options for a current assessment or updated evaluation. A is correct because we as addiction professionals and counselors have an ethical responsibility to provide documentation that is accurate, objective, and based on sufficient current information. Because the counselor has not seen the client in over a year, they cannot ethically endorse the client's present recovery status without a more current assessment or evaluation. B is incorrect because the statement you can attest to historical information. However, the client has requested an endorsement of their current recovery, and the counselor lacks sufficient recent knowledge to support the conclusion. C is incorrect because the client's self-report and outside documents may be helpful, but they do not replace the counselor's independent professional assessment when making a formal endorsement. And D is incorrect because counselors can provide documentation when appropriate and supported by professional knowledge and records. The issue is not that documentation is prohibited, it's that the counselor lacks current information to make the endorsement. So you may see a question like this that falls under confidentiality, release of information, legal requirements, professional standards. And for this scenario, it would be most appropriate to get an updated assessment. That way you can attest to current recovery. If the client have requested just history of treatment, then you get a release of information from the client to release the information to the specific person, whether it's an HR person. You want to be as specific as possible. So if they give you a company, maybe get someone's name that it's addressed to, and then you make sure a release of information is on file, and you can send history of treatment. But for here, you cannot attest to their current recovery because you haven't worked with them. So A would be the correct answer. Question 7. A client has attended substance use counseling consistently for several months and has met all treatment goals. The client reports sustained sobriety, demonstrates effective coping skills, and states, I don't think I need counseling anymore. I feel ready to move on. What is the counselor's most appropriate response? A. Encourage the client to continue treatment indefinitely because relapse can occur at any stage of recovery. B. Discharge the client immediately since they requested termination and have successfully completed treatment goals. C. Review the client's progress, discuss relapse prevention and available supports, and collaborate on an appropriate termination plan. Or D. Recommend that the client reduce sessions gradually, but avoid discussing termination until at least 1 year of sobriety has been achieved. Which one is the most appropriate and ethical response? So the client is consistent, has attended for several months, and met all goals. They feel like they're ready. All right. C. All right. The correct answer is C. Review the client's progress, discuss relapse prevention and available supports, and collaborate on an appropriate termination plan. This concept falls under ethical termination, and you might see a question like this under ethics, treatment planning, and also counseling skills. So the biggest takeaway is, how do you ethically terminate every client? So you may have a client that's ready. You may have a client that may not have reached their goals, but they are requesting to end. Or you may have a client that went ghost or didn't complete, and you weren't able to complete their goals and work with them. Either way, whatever the scenario, you have to do your due diligence to terminate the client ethically, meaning you have to follow up and document you called. You have to document that you've done discharge planning from the beginning, meaning when you're doing the intake and the orientation, you are discussing with them what it looks like when they're ready to terminate services. And you guys have to agree on what that looks like, and you have to make sure they understand. So that's the process of ethical termination. So you may get questions that say, a client never shows up, misses 5 sessions in a row, and they never show up. What do you do? Well, you document due diligence to reach out. Then you may have to send documentation in letter form or in your EHR, your electronic health system. You have to show that you've done due diligence to speak with the client, and if they decide that they don't want to move forward, that you are ethically making sure they're disconnecting from services. So that is the concept of ethical termination. Okay. Of course, I lost my place. One moment, guys. 7. Okay, let me give y'all your full explanation. Ethical termination occurs when services are no longer needed, treatment goals have been met, or the client chooses to end treatment. Counselors should plan for termination by reviewing progress, preparing for future challenges, discussing relapse prevention, and identifying ongoing supports. A is incorrect because relapse prevention is important, but counselors should avoid creating unnecessary dependence when treatment goals have been archived. So that goes back to discharge planning should start from day one. You should be discussing with your client what it looks like for them to discharge, or what progress would be made in order to discharge or to successfully discharge. B is incorrect because the client may be ready for discharge, but ethical termination involves planning and preparing rather than ending services without discussion. And D is incorrect because there are no ethical standards requiring a specific length of time of recovery or sobriety before termination. Decisions should be based on the client's needs, progress, and readiness. So you can't keep a client on because you feel like they need more help. It has to be clinically backed. And also, you can't force a client to stay on if they have decided that they want to end. Either way, an ethical termination has to take place. Question 8. A client experiences a medical emergency during a counseling session, and medical personnel arrive to provide treatment. The client is unconscious and unable to provide consent. What information may the counselor ethically and legally share with first responders? A. Only the client's name and date of birth, because all treatment information remains confidential without written authorization. B. A complete copy of the client's treatment record, because medical personnel need access to all available information. C. Information related only to the client's substance use history, because addiction treatment records are most relevant during emergencies. Or D. The minimum information necessary to address the medical emergency and protect the client's safety. So in terms of ethics, what would be the best, what information may the counselor share? Okay, I see some C's, I see some D's. Okay. The correct answer is D. The minimum information necessary to address the medical emergency and protect the client's safety. D is correct because during a medical emergency, counselors may disclose information as necessary to help the first responder provide safe and effective treatment. The disclosure should be limited to minimum information necessary to address emergency and protect the client's health and safety. A is incorrect because confidentiality is important. It's a pillar of our work we do. It doesn't work without confidentiality. Confidentiality exceptions allow necessary disclosures during true medical emergencies. And B is incorrect because this is too far. Counselors should not disclose more information than reasonably necessary to address the emergency. And C is incorrect because although substance use information may be important, first responders may also need other critical information such as medications, allergies, medical conditions, or details about the current emergency. And you can when you disclose that information, you can just give them the minimum, give them the medical information. They may not even need to know like what type of service you're giving them. Just depends on the medical emergency. So the way I remembered it when I was studying for confidentiality, when I was a new clinician, at the top, I imagine zip. Your mouth is zipped. You don't tell anything about a client. As a matter of fact, who is this person? I don't know. I have no idea. I cannot confirm or deny. So that's at the top of the mountain. I'm a visual learner, y'all. So I have to like make up pictures and stuff. And then the second pier or layer of the mountain is as needed. Is on an as needed basis. So if the client is in an emergency, you give them what they need to support the client in the emergency. And then at the bottom is full disclosure, and then always with a written consent for each disclosure. Because remember, we fall under both HIPAA and 42 CFR. So part 2, I just say part 2. So I imagine it like a upside down triangle. And the top is full non-disclosure, then minimum disclosure, and then full disclosure if you have the correct signature and release of information. All right, question 9. During a session, a client says, "You don't understand what I'm going through. Have you ever struggled with anything like this?" What is the counselor's most appropriate response? Share personal experiences in detail to strengthen rapport and help the client feel less alone in treatment. B, avoid answering the question entirely because self-disclosure is always considered unethical in counseling. C, ask the client why the information is important and redirect the discussion back to the client's needs and treatment. Or D, briefly disclose relevant personal experiences if they are accurate and likely to improve the client's motivation to change. Which one is the most appropriate and ethical response? Client wants to know, have you ever been through addiction or anything like they're going through? All right, I see some D's, I see some C's. And remember, this is for the exam. Here's a tip. For the exam, strictly right or wrong. We know in real life, depending on your role in your agency, if you might be a peer professional, meaning you are a licensed and certified professional with a history of mental health or substance use struggles, we know some of that can get gray. In those events, you would seek supervision to figure out what you would like to disclose or what wording you would like to use if you needed disclosure. But for the exam, there's none of that in the way. Is either a right or wrong answer. So which one would you lean towards? So I think of it that way. The correct answer is C. Ask the client why the information is important and redirect the discussion back to the client's needs and treatment goals. This is another type thing where I picture at the top, it will be full non-disclosure. For if I'm asking something on the exam about disclosure, I would say no disclosure. And then secondly would be appropriate disclosure. But again, I will put a star beside that and say if they ask you something about disclosure, you should be looking for answers that either say non-disclosure or seeking supervision, so that you can get clarity on what's appropriate. All right, C is correct because counselor self-disclosure should always serve the client's therapeutic needs, not the counselor's desire to connect or share. Before deciding whether to disclose, counselor should explore why the client is asking and how the information relates to treatment. Often the question itself provides valuable clinical information, and I would put in there, seek supervision. If you would like to disclose with the client, usually you will run it past your supervisor or a colleague so you guys can deduce what's the purpose of the disclosure. If it's just strictly, I want to just build rapport and make them feel like they're not alone, probably not a good idea. But if it makes sense in terms of, and it's ethical, and you ran it past your supervisor, usually you guys can come up with the way to do that. And again, I do know some of us are peers. So the whole point of being a peer is to disclose history. But again, that's real life, which can be a little bit different than exam life. All right, A is incorrect because rapport is important. However, extensive self-disclosure can shift the focus away from the client and blur professional boundaries. So you may be disclosing something that you feel is harmless, but maybe the client is feeling more like a friend. Or maybe they feel like they know something about you now. Or some clients have even reported too much self-disclosure makes them feel unsafe because they're like, okay, if I'm here for my problems, you got more problems than me. So again, for the exam, I would say no disclosure or minimum disclosure with supervision. D is incorrect because it sounds reasonable, but the counselor should first assess the purpose of the client's question before deciding whether this self-disclosure would be beneficial. All right. And question 10. A counselor learns that a new client owns a construction company. The counselor is planning home renovations and thinks the client will provide their services at a discounted rate. What is the counselor's most appropriate course of action? A, discuss the arrangement openly with the client and proceed if both parties believe it would not affect treatment. B, delay the business discussion until the counseling relationship has ended to avoid immediate ethical concerns. C, accept the discount if the client offers it voluntarily and document the arrangement in the treatment record. Or D, avoid entering into a business relationship with the client because it creates a conflict of interest and may impair professional judgment. What would be the most ethical answer? So it says counselor. So the client owns a construction company. The counselor is planning home renovations and thinks the client will provide services. Or your counselor owns a business. They offer services. What is your most appropriate ethical course of action? All right. I see D's across the board. For those of you who follow the APA or are already licensed, I do know the APA ethical rules has a bartering section. But for the exam, I don't think they would make a gray area like that. It says that you could arrange bartering if the correct steps have been taken. For the exam, the correct answer is D. Avoid entering into any business relationship with a client because it creates a conflict of interest and may impair professional judgment. This also falls under dual relationship. If you go into business with the client, now you have two relationships. You're the therapist and the customer, or vice versa. If you're the therapist, they can't now become a customer outside of being a client, but we call our client, they're clients to us, but they're a customer too because they're getting a service, but they can't be a customer outside of the clinical service. A conflict of interest occurs when a counselor's personal, financial, or professional interests could interfere with their ability to act in the client's best interest. Entering into a business relationship with a current client can impair objectivity, exploit the therapeutic relationship, and blur professional lines. A is incorrect because transparency is important. However, client agreement does not eliminate the ethical concerns associated with conflicts of interest. B is incorrect because ending treatment does not automatically remove ethical concerns. Former client relationships still require careful consideration due to the prior power imbalance. And C is incorrect because documenting the arrangement does not make it ethical. The concern is the dual financial relationship itself, not the lack of documentation. Okay. All right. So key takeaways for today's section, and this is not an exhaustive list. Maybe I'll probably do ethicals and professionals like every over 4 to 6 week period. We'll just go back in and spruce up on ethical standards and topics that fall under professional standards and ethics. So key takeaways. Ethical standards are the professional guidelines that we follow as addiction counselors. We provide safe, effective, and client-centered care. These standards don't just tell us what to do, they help us make difficult decisions. So, some of the key takeaways. We must protect client welfare. The client's well-being should always come before our personal opinions, convenience, or interests. We also have the responsibility to maintain confidentiality and understand the situations when confidentiality has legal and ethical limits, such as medical emergencies, threats of harm, or abuse reporting requirements. Also, we as addiction professionals must obtain informed consent, which means our clients understand the services being provided. They understand their rights, the limits to confidentiality, and they are clear before treatment starts. Another important standard in our profession is maintaining professional boundaries and avoiding dual relationships or conflicts of interest that could impair our judgment or harm the client. We are also expected to practice within our competence, meaning we only provide services we are trained in and qualified to deliver. When a situation is beyond our expertise, ethically, we should seek supervision, consultation, or make the appropriate referrals. And lastly, as ethical counselors, we document accurately, we respect clients' rights, we comply with laws and regulations, and seek consultation when faced with challenging situations. So, I think the biggest thing is when you are considering becoming licensed or certified, it means you're agreeing to the set of rules that that profession has. And some people, they may want a closer relationship or some type of different type of relationship. I always say, well, maybe you should consider something else, because when you are a therapist, a counselor, addiction professional, a professional that's held to a standard under a license or certification, we have standards and rules. So that's what that is. And you have to maintain, in order to keep the client safe, we maintain a certain, ethical level of the way we contact and communicate. So, all right, guys. As you are heading out, we got a few minutes. We got about 6 minutes. If you have extra questions, please put them in the comment. It could be on any topic, not just ethics. It could be on assessment, ethics, pharmacology, any questions you might have about addiction counseling exam prep. Make sure you like the video so we can get into the algorithm so we can find other study partners. We've had 39 new study partners join the YouTube page this week, guys. So welcome everyone. Best wishes to everyone who is preparing for their test. Yes, Jessica Joyce says the no gray areas on the test was a huge takeaway for me. Thank you. Yes. Most of us are seasoned clinicians. Most of us work in the field, because a lot of times people don't just wake up and want to become addiction professionals or counselors. We are already helpers. So we are born helpers, then we pursue a career. But a lot of times by the time we take these certification and licensing exams, we have lots of experience. Some of us have 10, 20, 30 years of clinical experience. So it's kind of hard to turn that off because, real life happens. However, you got to get into test mode. When I was taking my LPC exam, I was like, this is a perfect world. I am the almost perfect counselor, and I'm answering these questions just to show them how perfect I am. I had to tell myself that because working in the community mental health setting, all type of things happen and get in the way. There are lots of barriers. So I'm glad you got a takeaway from that. Don't overwhelm yourself, guys. You guys are full of knowledge, but just read the question and it's either right or wrong. All right. Thank you, guys. LaJohn Mitter says, are these study questions the same for the CCJP exam? I'm not sure, LaJohn. We studied foundational general topics for addiction counselor exams. So if I'm not mistaken, what is the CCJP? Is that the law exam? Because if it's under the law exam that some people have to take, you're more on the criminal justice side of substance use. But you probably could take something away from some of the basic foundational stuff we study. So yeah, please remind me what the CCJP is. Naya says, does this help with the LCAS? It helps with any addiction exam where you're going to be tested on foundational knowledge or general topics like addiction models, assessment, treatment planning, counseling skills, professional ethics in addiction counseling. But we don't know exactly what questions will be asked on any of the exams. So I think, like I said in the beginning, make sure you're downloading any documentation your testing site has or your testing exam website has. Like, for example, the ICNRC has a website where you can download what's going to be on the ADC test, the AADC test. NADAC.org has information that you can download on the NCAC1, the NCAC2. and make sure you specifically follow that. But you join us on Wednesdays or you watch my study videos to supplement all of your general foundation knowledge. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Cicely says, yes, I have about a year before I can take my exam. Okay, you're cruising it out, Cicely. Good timing. Thank you. Have a great rest of the week. Thank you, Doreen. Thank you for showing up. Kenneth says, pass the NCAC 1 for Maryland. There are no words to describe what you do. Thank you. Thank you, Kenneth. Congratulations to you and all of your hard work. So that's 2 for 2 for tonight. So we are 2 for 2 for tonight, y'all. I'm excited. I don't want to get too excited. It's going to make me break my diet, y'all. When I get excited, I want to go get a good meal, and it's usually not healthy. So I'm gonna have to celebrate with a sugar-free Coke or something. Sugar-free Coke Zero. Congratulations, Kenneth. I appreciate you for updating us. So we have somebody pass the ADC this week, and we have someone to pass the NCAC 1. Okay, AADC, we're waiting on you. Another MAC exam, we're waiting on you. All right, and you guys are welcome. Thank you. Thank you. We're all in this together, y'all. We gotta uplift our profession. We gotta make sure we're out here to help. We gotta make sure all of us are getting what we need to get certified and licensed and ready to help people. All right, LaJohn says criminal justice, but we have to take both tests to get certified. Okay, LaJohn. Well, this will help you with like the foundational knowledge of just general substance use issues. If you're still up here, you can hear me, LaJohn. You can click that link in the chat and download the free study guide. And although you're not taking the 5 main addiction counselor exams, it is very helpful in organizing your knowledge about, I think it's like 5 or 6 addiction counselor topics. So yes, it can be helpful. I'm gonna have to look that up. Let me write that down. The CCJD exam, because you're like the 3rd person that's asked me about that exam, but I wasn't, familiar with it. I didn't even know they had a specific certification for lawyers or people who want to work in law with a subtopic of substance use. So I'm learning too. So maybe I'll once I feel like I'm knowledgeable enough after I do my research, I can do a video specifically, like a little mini study guide. All right, but yeah, Kenneth passed, y'all. Okay, Kenneth and Howard. Okay, y'all just showing off. All right, guys, make sure you like the video on the way out. It helps other study partners see us in the algorithm so they can join us. We are growing. We're about 2,400 strong on the page now from all over the country. We got Cali, Texas, New York, Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee. Oh yeah, you're in the right place then, LaJohn. You're in the right place. You see, Howard passed the ADC. I don't know if you were here earlier. Yeah, if you have to take the ADC, you're in the right place. Get the free study, download the free study guide. And also check out the playlist. Y'all still with me, Playback? Hey, Playback, I haven't forgot about you. Make sure you like the video. And y'all make sure y'all check out the playlist. There's a 12 core function playlist. So if you're starting the very beginning of your study journey, or if not, any time in your study journey, and you just want to like reorganize and get the foundations down packed, we are in video 8 of the 12 core functions. I should be finished. I have the education video locked and loaded. I just need to post it this week. And that's just going to give you like the foundation of what we do as counselors and addiction counselors. Watch all of those videos and then start on your practice questions. We have over 400 practice questions now, y'all. So when you're cleaning up, press play. When you're just laying down, you want to catch a moment to get some quick study time in, press play, complete a few questions. All right. Well, I learned something new tonight. right. Thank you so much, LaJean. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you download this free study guide. That way you can get a reminder. If you join my email list, I'll remind you every week. And thank you so much for supporting the channel. Okay, everyone. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you for supporting this learning community. Congratulations again to Howard, who passed the ADC. And to Kenneth, who passed the ADC. Kenneth. Kenneth passed the NCAC one. Howard passed the ADC. Congratulations to you both. Your hard work definitely paid off. All right, guys. I will see you next week. I'll be posting the core function, client education core function video. I also have a stages of change. Someone has been requesting the stages of change video. And I was like, I'm going to just make the video about stages of change, just a dedicated video, because I want to make sure I keep my word. So expect those 2 videos over the next week, guys. Take care. Thank you so much. Good night.